We're delighted to announce that the City Empowerment Center at City of Hope Church now presents a total of 4 degree courses with the option of SACWA accreditation. T's and C's apply. Our options are Bachelor in Ministry, 4-year part-time course, Bachelor in Biblical Counseling, 3-year part-time course, Bachelor in Christian Theology, 3-year part-time course, as well as a Bachelor in Biblical Studies is also a 3-year part-time course. Our City Empowerment Center is devoted to excel in equipping people to find and fulfill their life purpose. Please contact the church office for more information.
Sit back and enjoy the service.
Now, from this passage in Luke 2, where Jesus disappears, I learned 5 lessons that I quickly want to share with you. It's for us as parents, but also for teachers. In verse 41, it says his parents went to Jerusalem every year. Can you just say every year? Okay. At the feast of Passovers, and when he was 12 years old, they went up to Jerusalem according to the custom of the feast. Can you say according to the custom? Number 1, we need to connect our children to culture and custom. It was the custom of Jesus and his family, of his parents, to go to Jerusalem every year for the feast of Passover. But I also believe it was their custom to visit the synagogue on a weekly basis and say their prayers and celebrate at the Shabbat on Friday evenings and Saturdays. It was their custom in their culture. I don't know about you, but I grew up in a day where it was custom to go to church every Sunday. Come on, if you grew up under that culture, that custom, get smile and wave. Wie van julle het so groot geword? Yes. I remember a day when there was no sports event on a Sunday because it was regarded as the Lord's Day. Can you remember that? And I know the real Sabbath is on Saturdays and I don't get it. But it was culturally, we were in a space where we said, we are setting one day aside for the Lord, and we're going to give him the attention that is due. And we find Jesus' parents had these customs in place, these cultures. Because when we have godly customs, godly cultures in place, you know what happens? We're setting our children up to have godly encounters that will connect them to their calling in life. Just yesterday I read this quote. As I prepared some of these points this week, and yesterday on Facebook I read this quote. Somebody once said, some wise person said, if going to church is optional to us, it will become unnecessary to our children. If going to church is optional to us, it will become unnecessary to the next generation. And God is calling us to build these godly customs, godly cultures into our children. And maybe for those of us, many of us grew up in traditional churches. How many of us hail from more traditional backgrounds? We come from the Dutch Reformed background, okay. So we understand that you go to church, okay. But maybe one of the disadvantages of the charismatic movement, okay, the charismatic movement of which we're part of today, right, is that we taught on, it's about relationship with Jesus, not religion, right? Is that true? It's true, right? It is true. But we get confused about this because we're thinking, if I don't have a relationship with Jesus, then why should I go to church? If it's not about the church, but just me and God, why should I go to church? Wie van julle het al so gedink? Be honest. Julle is te bang, 'n bliksemstraal tref julle uit die lug uit. It's true. It's the offspin of that truth, but it's a negative offspin. But can we just think logically about it? If I were to tell you as your pastor, I've got a relationship with Pastor Katunka, she's my wife. But I'm not religious about it, it's a relationship. So, because I'm not religious, ek gaan nie by haar in die huis bly. I'm going to stay in a different house. I'm not going to visit her. I'm not going to go to her house because it's all about relationship. It's not about religion. Do you see the logic is faulty? Julle sal sê, pastoor, jy het ander goeiers hierso, nee. You see, when I have a relationship with somebody, I want to be with her. I want to stay with her. I want to go dwell with her. I want to be in her house. She wants to be, we want to have one house. If I'm your friend, I want to visit your house. Come on. If you're my friend, I want to invite you to come over to my house, Reenen. Want to see where you live. Why? Because we've got a relationship. It's not about being religious. Church going is not about being religious. It's about connecting relationally, but also bringing our children into an environment where they can have an encounter with God Himself. I can promise you that the chances that your kid will have an encounter watching online TV is close to zero. Because there's no corporate anointing, there's no brothers and sisters, there's no unity that comes together. But the chances of them beginning to have godly encounters with their calling when you come to church is much greater. And Jesus' parents had these godly cultures and customs. The second point I learned here was in verse 43. It says, when they had finished the days of the Passover, as they returned, the boy was lingering behind in Jerusalem. And Joseph and his mother did not know it, but supposing him to have been with the company, they went a day's journey and sought him among their relatives and acquaintances. For an entire day they traveled, thinking that Jesus was among them. So they had this big travel party. They had this company with which they traveled. The second thought I've learned here is connect a child to a community. Connect a child to a godly community. In Africa, we've got a saying, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village, a godly village. Now, when we grew up, Roger, we had that village. I could get on my bicycle, go to school, come back with my friends, afterwards drop my suitcase, quickly get dressed, then we go to the caves in the hills, or we went fishing at the dam, or we went to the racetrack. And that was before high school. It was primary school. We could roam about freely. Come on, who of you can remember those days? There was a safe village. There was a safe community in which it was like a greenhouse in which we could mature and grow and learn stuff and try stuff and fall off our bicycles and get hurt and get healed again. But today we don't have that. Today most of us won't trust our children to go out on the streets because the streets aren't safe, right? Iets kan met hulle gebeur. And so it's our role as a church in partnership with schools and with the community to say, some way, somehow, we need to find a way of creating safe communities where our children can still have the input of a community, because it takes a village to raise a child. You see, today we're raising children behind concrete walls and electric fences and CCTV cameras and alarm systems and burglar bars. And we get isolated, and our children get isolated, and we delegate the raising of our children to a PlayStation, to TV games and computer games, because they're not connected to a godly village, to a godly community. And that's why we need church, and that's why we need to partner with the schools, because God has put these institutions in place to form that godly village. The third lesson I learned in verse 45, it says, so when they did not find him, that's now Jesus' parents looking for him, they returned to Jerusalem, seeking him. Now, so it was after 3 days that they found him in the temple, sitting in the midst of the teachers, both listening to them and asking them questions. And all who heard him were astonished at his understanding and his answers. Teachers connect a child, or connect to a child's questions, and teachers connect to a child's answers. You know, when my kids were small, especially my boys, when they were small, they thought the world of me. They thought I knew everything. They thought I was the smartest guy around. They thought I was the strongest. Ek kan nou nog atou het hulle vir hulle maatjie gesê, my pa kan jou met sy pink, jou pa met sy pinkie wen. You know that thing, you know. My pa het 'n groot geweer, meanwhile is 'n windbuks, okay? My pa het net sulke groot muscles, not really, but to them. And then they realize, they come to a certain age where they realize, Daddy doesn't know everything. And what a sobering awakening it is for them, okay? But what I've learned is my role as a dad is not to know everything and to teach them everything. My role as a dad is to create an environment where they've got access to learn everything. Where they've got access to mentors and fathers and uncles and grandfathers and teachers. You see, when Jesus' parents got to Jesus, they didn't start scolding the teachers that kept him busy for 4 days. No. They recognized the need for teachers in their child's life. You see, your role as a dad is not to be the superstar or a mom, but it's to create the environment where that child can connect to a math teacher, can connect to a sports coach. There's teachers. I had to learn that there's teachers and mentors that can take my children beyond. And my sons, they're into technical things, and so they've got an uncle on the estate that's very good, and I see how he coaches them. And you know, when they have questions on those things, they don't even come to me. They just go straight to him, or they go to grandpa. He's quite good with that. And that's wonderful, Dion. It's lekker. Because our role is to create the environment where they can flourish, where they can connect to their calling and their talents and their skills. Why? Why? Why do we need a community? Why do we need teachers to hear our children's questions and help them find answers for their problems? Why do we need that? Because we're not raising children, we are raising adults. Come on, turn to your neighbor and help me preach here. Say, we're not raising children. Say, you are not raising children. You are raising adults. Adults who are connected to their calling in life. Adults who are here to make a meaningful contribution to society. Adults who take responsibility. Somebody once said, never do for your child what they're supposed to be able to do for themselves at that age. Why? Because age-appropriate responsibility mature a child into adulthood. Okay, 2 more points. In verse 48, so when they saw Jesus, they were amazed, and his mother said to him, son, why have you done this to us? Look at your father, and I sought you anxiously. I can just picture this now. Now remember now, Jesus is sitting, the teachers of the law is there, the professors is there, the doctors is there in the temple. Jesus is asking them questions. Jesus is giving some answers. So it's an uitgeleese geselskap. It's an auspicious crowd that's gathered there. Jesus' mom have been seeking for him, missing one day, seeking for 3 days. She is freaking out. Okay? How many of you have lost a child at the mall for 30 minutes or for 3 minutes and you started freaking out? You're like, your mind is starting to play the video. You're thinking, he's lost, he's taken, she's abducted, and you're just getting your Liam Neeson voice ready. You know the Liam Neeson voice? I have a unique set of skills. I will find you, and I will kill you. Good luck. Okay, you've got that. You start playing the movie, but Mary is freaking out. It's been 3 days she's looking for him, and a 4th day that he's missing in total. And I can just imagine, now she enters this hierdie uitgeleese geselskap, so she doesn't want to lose face. So she very politely says to Jesus, son, I bet most of us would not have called him son at that point. We would have put in another voorvoegsel daar. Okay, son, why have you done this to us? Look, your father and I have sought you anxiously. I'm thinking she's saying these nice words, but she's giving Jesus the look. You know the mom's look. Son, I'm going to kill you. And Jesus answered them, why did you seek me? This sounds like a teenager. Why did you seek me? Did you not know that I must be about my Father's business? Connect a child to God's business. Connect a child to God's business. And there are times when our children starts following God, and maybe they want to sing in the worship team, or maybe they want to serve at youth, or maybe they want to do this or that. I want to encourage you to encourage them and not discourage them. Because that conviction they have to be about God's business oftentimes is so thin that if we discourage them, we can break their spirit. I want to tell you a story that happened when I was a youth pastor, a true account of this young man. His name was Leonard. Oh. There was a revival among the teens in Bloemfontein, and Leonard was one of them that got saved, and he had to battle some serious stuff in his life and some serious brokenness in his childhood, and he just fell in love with Jesus, and he began to serve Jesus, and he was from a traditional church background, but why he just loved Jesus, and he was just at church every day. You know, he was there on Sunday morning, he was there on a Sunday evening, he came on Wednesday for cell, but Monday he came for a drum lesson, and Tuesday he just rocked up. He just popped up because he just needed that connection, right? And then on Friday he was at youth, and then Sunday started, and he was just so passionate about Jesus. And then after about a year of him being a disciple of Jesus, his mom had passed away early, so his grand raised him. She called me and she said, Pastor Jan, Leonard is too busy at church, and he's taking this whole thing of church too far. And I've said to him, he's not allowed to come to church anymore. And I remember pleading with her, saying, ma'am, please don't do this. Please don't do this. We've seen so much growth in Leonard. You know, he's just discovering himself, he's finding purpose, he's finding meaning, he's finding connection with other people. She said, sorry, Pastor, I've made up my mind, this is it. And we didn't see Leonard for about 9 months until I received another call from his grandmother saying, please, Pastor, can you meet with Leonard? He's fallen into the wrong crowd and he started using drugs and he's addicted to that. And I promise you, we could not win Leonard back again. Because he was so soos 'n eeld wat geseer is, his conscience was seared. I want to encourage you as parents, as grandparents, when your children serve God, when they want to do something for God, do everything in your power to encourage that. Don't discourage that. When they say, I want to be about God's business, encourage them. Even if it looks a little bit crazy, that's all right. Rather let them be crazy for Jesus than to be crazy for something else. Rather let them become addicted to Jesus than addicted to drugs and alcohol and whatever other nonsense there is out there. We need to connect our children to God's business. You see, God said to us as a church in the beginning of the year, He said, if you make my business your business, I will make your business my business. God will look after your children. Seek first the kingdom. Last point I found in verse 51. It says they went down with, then Jesus went down with them and came to Nazareth and was subject to them. Some Bible says obedient to them. But his mother kept all of these things in her heart. And Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and favor with men. Last thought I want to leave with you is connect the child, or connect to a child's greatest needs. What is the greatest need? Here we have Jesus saying, He's saying, I'm about my Father's business. Why are you looking for me? And in the same line, the next verse, He returns home with them and He remains in submission and obedient to them. Get that? The Son of God, the King of Kings, obeying His parents. Why is that? Because the number one need of a child, any child, is submission and obedience. Let me preach at this side of the congregation. I know submission and obedience is not the most favorite words in our modern day society, but the number one need of any child is to learn obedience and submission. And the number one role of a parent is to teach a child obedience and submission, because if they can obey and submit to a parent that they see, that they hear, that they can touch, that they can feel sometimes as well, when they can learn to obey and submit, then maybe, just maybe, just maybe, they can submit and obey an invisible God that they can never hear or never see really in person. And that's why we partner with teachers, because it's also at school that children need to learn obedience and submission. So your role is not to get your son or your daughter into the Springbok team. It's to train them in obedience and submission. In a loving way, in a God-honoring way, in a way that doesn't break their spirit, yes. But connect to your child's basic need to learn submission and obedience. Is that good? Amen.